Hi, I'm Robbin Miller. I'm the host of Miller Chat, and I'm very honored to have my guest today, Kimberly Amato, Vice Chair of Parents Against Tipovers and founders of Meghan's Hope. You may know Kimberly from being on my show in the past couple of years to talk about the great work that she's doing to promote safety for children at home on preventing tipovers. So, welcome back.
Thank you so much. It's great to be back.
Yes, so why did you just remind our viewers just a little bit about
Sure. So my daughter Megan actually died from a dresser tip over the Saturday before Christmas in 2004. It happened, sometime between the time she went to bed and the time she was supposed to get up in the morning. We were all sleeping at the time. We didn't hear it fall. She was unable to cry. And unfortunately, she didn't survive.
I know that you tell that story many times over, and does it get any easier, or is it just as painful as it was yesterday?
Easier, no. I think, well, I suppose it depends on how you define easier. I do talk about it all the time, so it kind of rolls off my tongue much more easily. But I miss her every day. I think of her every day. I wish somebody had done the work that I and my fellow Parents Against Tipovers have done prior to her losing her life this way.
So why don't we begin? Tell us where we've left off a few years ago. We were talking about Parents Against Tipovers, Sturdy Act. So where do you want to begin? What do you want to start with first?
Well, I want to start by saying I have good news.
All
Um,
right.
so I've been advocating for over 18 years now. Megan died 18 years ago. She was 3 at the time that she died. And I've been pressuring the Consumer Product Safety Commission to do something about this. I've been pressuring the furniture industry to do something about this. We started pressuring Congress to do something about this. And back in 2018, Parents Against Tipovers formed, and I think I spoke with you last shortly after that. And the hope was that our voices would be louder together. And they actually have been. We collaborated with consumer advocacy groups like Consumer Reports and Kids in Danger. They mentored us. They helped us to kind of know where to go and who to talk to. And we sort of upped our game. And the end result is we now have just published last week, finally, a stronger voluntary furniture safety standard for clothing storage furniture. We have a mandatory federal safety standard that the CPSC published back in November that is scheduled to go into effect on May 24th of this year. And we got the Sturdy Act signed into law by President Biden in December. And the Sturdy Act stands for Stop Tipovers of Unstable Risky Dressers on Youth. What that all means is that after all this time, there's finally going to be a strong, effective, mandatory furniture safety and stability standard that applies to dressers and other clothing storage furniture. And the final rule, whatever it's going to be, will be decided by the end of this year. And it will go into effect shortly thereafter.
But it's just, as you say, it's only for dressers.
Right. And that's something that's really important. So that voluntary standard I referred to, the standard that the CPSC is going to be, what they call promulgating, writing, determining underneath the Sturdy Act, it's only going to apply to dressers and other clothing storage furniture like wardrobes or, things typical of bedroom storage furniture. So it won't apply to bookcases or shelving units or, those cube units that you can put bins in, those sorts of things. Those are not covered by any of these standards.
Wow. Well, you've done a lot of work over the years, and kudos to you and those parents, and the groups that you had working with you. Can you talk a little bit about when you went to Congress? I think there'll be a picture of you, be it at the Capitol. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So one of the reasons that we really wanted to get the Sturdy Act passed and signed into law is because even though we finally got the Consumer Product Safety Commission to publish a mandatory standard, the furniture industry immediately sued to have it thrown out in court. And that is currently playing out. So
Oh, boy.
that rule might actually get thrown out. The Sturdy Act is so important because now it's literally an act of Congress. It's a law. The CPSC has to now promulgate a mandatory standard that addresses the real reasons tip overs happen. So those are multiple drawers open at once. Things in the drawers account for the weight of a child up to 6 years old, because most of the injuries and deaths to children happen to children 6 and under, and also account for the dynamic forces that occur when a child climbs or pushes or pulls on a dresser or wardrobe or some other type of clothing storage furniture. So the Sturdy Act's actually been introduced to 3 different sessions of Congress. The first time it was introduced late in the session, it didn't go anywhere. The second time we got it passed through the House, but when it got to the Senate, they refused to do anything with it. And every 2 years, sessions of Congress expire and a new Congress comes in. So the bill died on the floor, with it. But this past session of Congress, we decided that we needed to collaborate, and we invited industry to the table. And the first members of industry to come to negotiate with us on the text of Sturdy and collaborate with us was IKEA.
Oh, yeah.
And for Parents Against Tip Overs, and as your viewers may well know, IKEA has gotten a lot of bad press. They've been the subject of many recalls for many, many years. They did not do the right thing. And several of the parents of Parents Against Tip Overs, their children were actually killed by IKEA dressers. But we saw that the only way that we were going to come to a solution that was actually going to work and that everybody was going to agree on was that everybody had to come to the table to create that solution. So we invited IKEA to the table. We negotiated with them. We started working with the bill's sponsors, Senator Casey from Pennsylvania and Congresswoman Schakowsky from Illinois. And then we pulled in the Commerce Committee. It became a bipartisan supported bill. And then we got the American Home Furnishing Association, which is the big furniture industry in the United States that has fought legislation for 18 years. We finally got them to come to the table when they realized that they had to be part of the solution. So getting Sturdy passed required collaboration. It required negotiation. It required everybody coming together to compromise on a bill that we could all agree was going to better protect children and save lives. So when it passed the House and the Senate, and then went on to President Biden's desk, we were overjoyed. So we were invited to the Capitol a couple of weeks ago by Senator Casey, the bill's primary sponsor, and they presented all of the parents with a signed copy of the bill. And that's the picture of me in front of the Capitol holding the bill. We got a private tour of the Capitol, which was nice. And we had pictures taken with Senator Amy Klobuchar, Senator Casey, Senator Cantwell, and Jen Schakowsky, Congresswoman Schakowsky, who were all instrumental in helping to get the Sturdy Act through the Senate and through the House and into law.
So is the Sturdy Act is only for furniture? Just to make it clear, is it voluntary or is it mandate?
The Sturdy Act is mandatory. So now that it's passed, what it requires is that the Consumer Product Safety Commission first look at that newly published voluntary standard. And if they feel it meets the requirements of the Sturdy Act, then they would make that the mandatory standard. If they don't feel that that voluntary standard meets the requirements of the Sturdy Act, then they will create their own mandatory standard that, to their understanding, is strong enough to meet those requirements.
So my understanding, why would the furniture industry be against something that promotes safety? What is it to them? Well, why are they so
Money.
against it?
It's
Money?
money. Yeah. I mean, it's expensive for them
Right.
to, redesign furniture, to retool their manufacturing plants, right? To meet these specifications that are required for the stability tests and to actually carry out the tests and make sure that the furniture passes. But honestly, with all the money that they've spent fighting legislation over the years, fighting advancing the voluntary standard, they could have done this years ago and saved themselves millions of dollars, and they chose not to. So, and I've said this to them, you made this bed, it's lumpy and it's uncomfortable, and you have no one to blame but yourselves. So, do the right thing.
Well, people have to learn that to do something as monumental as you and the other families, that takes time and it takes a lot of work and effort.
It does. I mean, I work full time. I'm a physical therapist. I screen for Fairlawn Rehab Hospital. I spend most of my weekends, my evenings, my free time on all of this, on all of the tip over stuff. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of phone calls. It's a lot of meetings. It's a lot of research. It's a lot of preparing for meetings. We had phone calls every week with our little coalition to talk about the Sturdy Act. We met with many, many members of Congress over the past couple of years. I've presented at conferences. It's really been almost another full-time job.
Well, it is when it's here, but at the end of the day, if it's really important and if you could save one life, that's what matters.
Absolutely. Robin, I might have told you this story before, but the day Maggie died, I held her for the last time in the emergency room at UMass. And I promised her that I wouldn't let this happen to anyone else. And hundreds of children have died since Meghan did. Almost 600 children have died in the past 20 years from tip overs. And when the Sturdy Act was signed into law, I cried, not because I was like, oh, such a relief, I was so excited, but I cried because I can finally honor that promise to Maggie.
Of course. Of course. And I thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
And were the people in Congress able to relate to your story?
That's a really good question. And we talked to Senator Casey because he sponsored this bill 3 times. And we asked him, we're like, what changed for you? Because, they sponsor bills all the time, but they're not really involved in doing anything with them, right? And we asked to meet with him. And none of us were his constituents. None of us were from Pennsylvania. But we asked to meet with him and he agreed. And we all told him our stories. And he said, it was your stories. Like, it tore at my heartstrings and it made me realize how important this issue is. And that your children aren't just statistics. And, he said that was the game changer for him. And we've heard that from many, many people. And I've said this all along, statistics don't motivate people, but the story does. Being able to relate and identify with the experience is what really kind of hits people in the heart and makes them realize they need to do something about it.
Was our Massachusetts delegation on board?
Yes, Senator Warren and Senator Markey were both original co-sponsors of the Senate bill, and Congressman McGovern and Seth Moulton and a couple others were co-sponsors on the House side.
Oh, interesting. Well, I think that there's important lessons here. What if you were to educate somebody who wanted to do something similar to you? What would be the top 3 lessons that you would tell them or for?
I would first say reach out to somebody who's already done it.
Like you?
Um, yeah, I mean, we connected with Kids in Danger who have been advocating for child safety
Mhm.
for, many, 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 many years. And they were the ones who kind of helped us understand where to go and what to do. So that would be the first thing I would say. Don't reinvent the wheel.
Mhm.
Reach out to somebody. The second thing I would say is do your homework. And the third thing I would say is get involved. I mean, we got involved with the CPSC, we got involved with the ASTM standards, and we're voting members of that committee. We got involved with Congress, and then be prepared for it to take a long time. I was really naive to think that all I needed to do was tell the right people and they would fix this problem. It's taken a really long time.
Yeah. What else are you working on similar to this?
This isn't over. So, our focus is kind of shifting. We want to make sure that parents are still and caregivers are still aware that even though this mandatory standard is going to require new furniture once it goes into effect to meet the standard, everything already in your home still poses a risk.
Yeah.
All kinds of furniture, televisions, appliances, they all really need to be secured properly to the wall. And that's a message that we can't get out there enough. I think the other thing is to realize that you can be part of the solution. If you've had an experience where you've had a near miss or a furniture tip over, even if it was years ago, report it to the Consumer Product Safety Commission. They have a website called saferproducts.gov. It's a really easy way to report incidents, not just tip overs, any incident that you
Right,
might have
right,
had.
right.
And then you can also look them up.
Mhm.
So, if you're like, I wonder if there's been an issue with this product, you can just search for it and it will pull up any reports that have happened. That's how a lot of recalls happen, is when things get reported.
Well, and I've said this before, we bought a dresser from a furniture store. It was actually, it's not it's not something that's made in every store. It was specially made.
Mm-hmm.
The furniture store that just Millwood store, they went out of business.
Yeah.
And I read the story when we adopted EJ in 2009. I read it in Parent Magazine, K-State.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately got the straps at the Walmart, put them
Mm-hmm.
on, and 4 years later, unbeknownst to us, he happened to just pull the dresses and boom, they almost
Yeah.
fell on him, but it was the straps that held the dresser back.
Yeah. Thank goodness.
So, I mean, he was 4 years old by then, but the point is, he could have been seriously injured if the dresser actually fell on him with all those dresses.
Oh, absolutely.
And I listened, but when you tell people this, the first response is, it won't happen to me.
Exactly. Yeah. Or
So,
my children's not a climber, or I'm always with
right,
them. Yeah.
mind your business.
That too.
I remember that, and I tell everybody else about it. There's no shame to be safe.
No, definitely not. And the thing is, you can be in the same room and be powerless to stop it from happening. This just happened. We just heard about an incident of a dresser that was manufactured in May that fell on a little girl and almost severed her toes.
Mhm.
And her dad was in the room. He had unhooked it. It had been anchored. He unhooked it because they were painting,
Right,
and he hadn't hooked it back up to the wall yet. And all she did was open the drawers. She didn't even try to climb it, and it fell, and he just couldn't get there fast enough. So yeah, it's really important that people understand that you're not necessarily faster than gravity. And
right.
once you hear the crash, it's too late.
Yep. Well, we were blessed that did safe, and we took it off when he was about 7, 8. Now he's 5'2". We have this, the new TVs, the smart TVs. There's no
Mm-hmm.
equipment to hold them back. Can you comment a little bit about that?
Yes, so there's a big myth that now that we're seeing fewer and fewer of those old tube TVs and people are buying flat screens, that they don't pose a risk. Most flat screens actually have little notches in the back that are meant for straps to attach. They usually don't come with them, though. You have to buy them aftermarket. But the way I explain it to people is if you have a flat screen TV that weighs just 10 pounds, that's the weight of a bowling ball. So if you think about dropping a bowling ball from, say, 3 feet high onto your child's leg, or God forbid, their head, what would happen? Well, it would certainly break a bone. If it hit their head, it would probably kill them. And then the bigger the TV, the more the bowling balls, right?
Yes.
So I tell people to please secure those flat screens either directly to the wall. You can buy a wall mount pretty much anywhere now, or you can buy straps for flat screen TVs that attach to the back of the TV, and then you can attach those straps to the wall or to the back of the furniture on which it sits, and then make sure the furniture is also attached to the wall.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it. I went to Home Depot. I couldn't find it.
That's one of the problems, even now, and it flabbergasts me that 18 years after Meghan died, the stores, the brick and mortar stores, still don't carry a lot of these tip over restraints. You have to go online and get them.
Yeah.
And part of the problem with shopping online is there's a lot of counterfeit or knockoff products now that are not safe. They're not tested. They're inferior. They're made of inferior materials. They're much more likely to fail. The screws aren't long enough, those sorts of things. And parents don't know. So that's one of the things I hope to be working on is, working with that ASTM voluntary standard process to create now at least a voluntary standard for tip restraints, and that those are tested, and that we ask that they be tested to make sure that they actually work.
Yeah, I agree. Well, with all the technology, every year there's always different technologies that come out and stay on tables, but it doesn't mean they won't tip over.
Right. It's
Like
true.
like big computer screens. We have a 32-inch TV, and actually I'm holding it up with styrofoam because
Mm-hmm.
the legs under it, I have to tell you, they're not that firm. So that's why I'm trying to get a strap, even though my son is 13. But we
Yeah.
actually I cut the styrofoam and I put them right under the TV to hold up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I will tell you, Robin, one of the more alarming statistics that has been increasing over the years is that the injuries and deaths to children have always been the highest, right? But 15% of fatalities due to tip overs are to adults over the age of 60.
Oh,
And that's almost always a dresser or a dresser with a TV on top. So, even though we think, oh, the kids are older, right? They might just accidentally bump into it and knock it over. Or, an elderly person or somebody who's confused might not realize, when they go,
that's right.
they fall, they go to catch themselves and the TV topples, right? So, we have to think about our vulnerable populations on both ends of the spectrum.
When I think of rest homes or assisted living and they have these gigantic dresses, I don't think they're strapped against the wall.
No, they could be, but again, it's an educational issue. So one of the things that I do is I work with the Consumer Product Safety Commission and their Anchor It campaign, and they have a
Mm-hmm.
whole website devoted to tip overs and how to anchor furniture and TVs safely to the wall. And that's one of the things I'm asking them to do is to, target now older Americans, older
Yes.
adults, and the places where they live, work, and play, just like children, to increase that awareness, because it's only a matter of time. I mean, elders have died in nursing homes and assisted livings because of tip overs, as well as in their own homes.
Yeah, I know. They were because of COVID is obviously that just complicated the issue of safety.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But it's definitely worth looking into. Even pets can be endangered
Oh,
too.
sure.
People don't see it. Everybody has that attitude. It won't happen to me. What is your business? In the old days, maybe people in close knit circles were able to share and care, but since society and certain communities are just so distant, people don't want you saying anything, even though it's helpful. It's not telling them to do it. It's sharing the stories they experience. But of course,
Mhm.
first thing they say is, "Well, I'm sorry it happened to you, but it won't happen to me." So
Yeah.
that's the
I
response that you get.
Yeah, almost every parent that I've talked to who has had a tip over, whether it injured or killed their child or they were lucky, and it really was just luck,
Hmm.
right? Um, they've said to me, I really thought I was the only one until I found your website, your story, I saw your post on Facebook, somebody shared it, and they're like, I didn't realize how prevalent this issue was. Um, and others who said, I did and I didn't do anything about it. And then I read your story, and I promise that my child's not going to bed tonight until their dress are strapped to the wall. So
Yep.
again, it circles back to the story.
And that's what I see when I was adopting and we had to take classes. None of this. They talked about plugs for the walls. They
Yep.
don't teach this in the parent safety classes.
No, they don't. I taught safety classes when Megan died, and this was something I didn't know anything about. And I took that everywhere I could and said, how come I didn't know? If the CPSC knew, how come I didn't know? And they didn't have a good answer for it, but it's an awareness issue, and you're right, it's a, oh, that doesn't happen to me issue. But yes, it goes to childcare providers, it goes to
Yes.
Department of Children and Family Services, it goes to pediatricians. There's a whole lot of people who need to really understand this issue and how to advise people to protect themselves and protect their kids.
I agree. Well, I appreciate the work that you've done. I know I've said this before, but has Hallmark or Amazon asked about your story for TV?
No, no, Netflix did a documentary a few years ago, but it was really more about IKEA, and we didn't know that at the time that we were being filmed for it. But no, we'd be happy to share it with anybody who wants to hear it.
Well, shows like this, and because I become a podcast, the more the word gets out, I
Mhm.
think eventually, because I haven't seen really anything like this on TV.
No, no.
There's more junk on TV that's technically not safe for kids in terms of video game, but it's a whole nother ball game. Maybe they should develop a video game on safety for the home,
That's a great idea.
right? Why not?
I like it.
Get all the safety points.
Yeah, I
Well,
like it.
we have another minute to go. So, do you want to share any information with the audience about how to contact you and anything like that?
You can certainly find Parents Against Tipovers and Megan's Hope on Facebook, on Twitter. You can find our websites. I think you're going to put the links
Mhm.
in the notes. And I would just really ask that everybody please go through your home. If your furniture and TVs are not anchored, please do so. You may not have small children or elders in your home, but chances are you're going to have someone with small children or elders who visit. So be prepared. And then, visit the CPSC's anchorit.gov to learn more about how to safely anchor furniture.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Kim Amato. Kim Amato is the vice chair of Parents Against Tipovers and founders of Meghan Hope. All information about how to contact her will be up as the credits. Well, thank you very much for coming on my show.
Thank you so much, Robin. It was a pleasure as always to talk to you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you and good night.